again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Hilltop. We are very fortunate today to have our principal, Mr. Phil Rone, with us today. Thank you, Phil, for joining us.
You're welcome.
It's great to have you. So you're a long time Chaminade, another Chaminade legend we have here with us today. So it's we're going to learn a little bit about your time here at Chaminade and also the backstory and sort of Phil Rone outside of Chaminade a little bit. So.
Okay.
Let's start at the beginning. Where are you a lifelong St. Louisan? Where were you born? Give us some of that background.
Yeah, lifelong St. Louisan. I was born up in North County.
Love it.
Not
North
far
County
from the confluence in Spanish Lake. Went to St. Aloysius. I remember in 6th grade we celebrated our centennial, 100 years. Then I went to an archdiocesan high school, Rosary, which became Trinity and is now not in existence. And then I went to Benedictine College. So I was educated in the Catholic tradition.
Sure.
From 1st grade all the way up to senior in college.
What was young Phil Rone into? Were you an athlete? Were you into the arts? What was the young Phil Rone like in grade school?
Actually, I played football. And of course, Catholic grade school, we played soccer and baseball. In high school, I played football. I was in the plays every year in high school. I moved from building the sets freshman year to helping people change clothes, to being a dancer, I remember being a dancer in Hello Dolly. And then I got a Commander Harbison in South Pacific when I was a senior. So that was kind of nerve-wracking.
So well-rounded guy.
Well, I don't know, but it was fun. We had fun.
I like it. What's the Rone family like? Siblings?
I have 5 siblings.
Are you?
There's 3 girls and 3 boys in our family. Gotcha. Yeah, big family.
Very good, very good. So, so you went to Benedictine. Why Benedictine? What called you there?
They asked me to play football, and I wanted to continue to play football. And I heard good things about the school, and it was a good fit.
So on the football field, who were you? What position? What was your strengths?
I was a defensive end in a 43 defense. Gotcha. So it was a lot of fun.
Good. So you played all 4 years at Benedictine?
Yes, I did.
Gotcha. What was the Benedictine team like? Were you?
We were kind of
ragtag group. What were
exactly?
You? Oh.
We were kind of the beginning. Now they're really good, but we were kind of the foundation. I remember they changed coaches my sophomore year, and that coach just recently retired.
Wow!
And had a huge winning streak. So yeah, they did well, but we were when we were there, it was a little different than it is today. So.
What did you study at Benedictine?
I started out in business, and then I quickly realized I need to study something I'm interested in. So I started studying history and secondary education.
Very good. So what shaped you into looking at secondary education or moving into that world? Was this something you had been interested all along? Was it sort of, influential people maybe in your education that stood out like, hey, I might want to do this down the road? Or
yeah, it was kind of like I enjoyed high school. I enjoyed my teachers. I liked high school, and I liked helping people. And there was a tradition in my family. There was teachers, there was police officers, so they were always kind of people that helped. And I liked doing that. And so when I came back from college, I had an opportunity to teach at Hayeswood East. And I don't know why, but I decided, it just didn't feel good. And then eventually I got hired at CBC.
Gotcha. Yeah. So was that was your first job out of college?
Yep.
Was it
first
CBC?
Job.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what was it like? Young Phil Rone, just out of college, ready to enter the classroom on the other side of things. Nervous, confidence, excited.
I was excited, and I enjoyed it. The people there, they were great. Actually, I had to teach theology. 3 classes, history, 2 theology, and so I was a little shaky on that, but I had a lot of help, and so it was a lot of fun. Coached football and baseball, and it was great.
So what was it like? You hadn't been in an all-boy environment. You went to co-ed schools and such. Mm-hmm. Were there any early challenges or sort of things that may be different than you experienced being in an all-male school?
Yeah, right away you notice it's a little different. Not a lot of hygiene, They just didn't care about that. It wasn't a priority. I actually noticed that in college when I met, females from all-girls schools. They kind of were in some ways like all boys. They didn't really care about the other gender. So it was kind of a shock. But when I got to CBC, it was a good place. There was good people there, and I think that one of the things that drew me was the faith aspect of it. Because I've always been God had always been there. Notre Dame nuns had been there, and then there were priests at Rosary. So when I got to CBC, it was an easy transition. It's always your faith was always the foundation. So when it got dicey, it was difficult. There was always your faith life to fall back on.
Sure. So then how long were you at CBC?
I was at CBC for 6 years as a young man. I coached. I cut my teeth as a teacher. As a teacher the first year. Kind of crazy. Second year, I learned a lot and did it a little differently. And then each year, you got better. You learned something new. The kids were great. The teachers were great. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Very good. So why'd you leave there? What was next?
So I guess I was around 27, 28. In the summer, I'd always worked for this construction company that renovated, even in college, that renovated hotels. And so when I was at CBC, I did the same thing. The last day of school, I went to work somewhere around the country, taking apart a Marriott. I did all kinds of jobs. I wasn't like a union guy, so I kind of was a jack of all trades. I went where they needed me. And so I did that every summer, and then around 27, I was on a job, and the superintendent had to leave, but they asked me to run the job. And so I did the job, and then they asked me to take a job. And so I did that for like 4 years, which was an eye-opener. I was 27. I wanted to know what it was like to work out in the economy. Because I've been in schools my whole life. I wasn't married, no responsibility, so I was able to make that decision.
So what do you, now later obviously, and we'll get to that, getting back into education, what do you take from those years of working in the construction industry and in the economy, as you said? What do you take from that and sort of bring that into your future time back in education?
Good question. It was interesting. So in July and August, I was literally running a crew of 125 guys, construction workers. A month later, I'm here at Chaminade teaching seniors. And the dynamic between those two different groups there's a lot of similarities, but there were a lot of huge differences. But you look at things differently. You look at it more from a business side, because when you're running a business or a company, you have to make all the ends have to meet at the end. And so there was a lot of skills that I brought from teaching as a young man to that job, and then there was a lot of skills that I took from that job. Like I remember having to read the plans. I kind of looked at it as like reading your history book, where you have to take your notes, be ready to deliver, communicate that, what has to be done. And then when I went back into the classroom, I learned some nuances from doing that and the economy to help me. I remember one of the first or second days in my class, I'm looking around and I knew how much tuition was. I was sitting there adding up how many kids were in that class, how much they were paying for it to be in that one class. And so that, it's a different take. And, my parents paid and struggled to pay tuition, so I took that into account.
Sure. Makes sense. So why the move back after this years out in the construction industry? Why back, and then ultimately why Chaminade, or how Chaminade?
The move back was, it wasn't. I didn't get like you fix up a beautiful hotel, and it wasn't like, I didn't even get any kicks out of that. It was not a big deal. It was a lot of struggle, a lot of, it was okay, but it wasn't like winning a football game. It wasn't like watching a kid struggle and you help them out and you see the light go on. It wasn't like that. And so I just wanted to, I was traveling all the time. I got tired of traveling and I wanted to come home. And one of the guys I worked with at CBC, he started working here, and I had met him. I ran into him, and he says, "Hey, they have a history job over at Chaminade if you're interested." And so I said, "Sure," and I called up, and they interviewed me the next day. And so, yeah.
Rest is history. That's your connection. So who were some of the early people in the administration, or sort of some of those early people here at Chaminade that kind of stuck out to you? Who are those legends of Chaminade that you sort of learned from in your early days here in that way?
Yeah. So, of course, Father Ralph. But early on, I didn't have too much contact with Father Ralph. I was a young Brother Rich Villa. I don't know if you heard of him.
I don't know that.
He was a great guy. He was the formation person in the administration. And yeah, so then all the older teachers back then, like I remember, I was kind of like Dr. Schmidt. I had a big voice, and some, brothers would come and shut my door because I was talking too loud. One even said, "Hey, we already heard your class once today. We don't need to hear it again." And so the camaraderie and the esprit de corps of the faculty was, you have a responsibility to do this and take care of the kids and get on it. And I was more worried about the teachers, and I was young, than I was about the administration.
What year was this? When did you come?
That was in the fall of '92, and they had just won state in baseball. And the thing was great about it is I got to design my own class. Mr. Gerker asked me to design a 20th century world history class and current issues. And I ask any history teacher, who wouldn't love to do that? Yeah. So you only have to teach 100 years, right? Think about Western Civ. It's like, all right, from the beginning of time all the way up, right? So that was a lot of fun, and the seniors were a handful that first year. But I was well prepared after 6 years at CBC, and then 4 years running a construction crew. It wasn't too difficult. It was a lot of fun.
So did you jump right back into coaching and sort of being involved in the life of the school too in that way?
Yeah, I did. I started coaching baseball and football right away. I remember coaching with Mr. Krismer, and he was a rookie too. And so we had a lot of fun coaching lower level football, and then eventually went up to varsity. Same thing with baseball. Didn't go up to varsity on baseball, but had a lot of fun doing that with Mr. Francis, Coach Francis, and a lot of folks.
Very good, very good. So were you, I know you mentioned that first year you were with seniors. Is that mostly who you had when you were in the classroom? Did you stick with that senior?
Oh, I taught seniors.
You
one year I think
seniors.
I taught all the seniors, and then one junior class. Gotcha. But I taught seniors the whole time I was here. Ironically, at CBC I taught all freshmen.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
I always kind of wondered that. How was it teaching seniors? Obviously, they've got their own agendas. They're looking towards their future. But also, how do you, at that point, get to know sort of the younger ages? Or were you able to, I guess, with
sports.
Football and yeah. So talk a little bit about that sort of being with that age group. I teach all the age levels, so it's great when I teach a younger grade level, and then even if I don't have them in class, I sort of feel like I know them the rest of their time.
Yeah, exactly. A good question, because when I was at CBC, after 4 years, I knew all the kids in the school because I was teaching all the freshmen. It was great. But, I wouldn't get to know the kids unless they were like, I see them at football games and baseball games, but I coach lower level sports. So that's how I got to see the kids. Go on retreats with the lower levels, and you see what's coming, what kids are coming up. And so you get to understand the fabric of the student body and, the kids, through talking to other teachers. But I always made it a point not to talk to the junior teachers about who was coming, because I wanted to judge the kids as they came in. I didn't want to have preconceived ideas and banish them from the kingdom before they even got into the class.
Now, coming from a Christian Brothers school and then obviously being out in the quote-unquote real world for a while, what were some of the early impressions you had of Marianist education? Certainly something that we pride ourselves on here. What was different maybe than you experienced at CBC, or what does kind of the Marianist education mean to you, or especially in those early days, what did you experience with the Marianists? Yeah,
so that was one of the first things I noticed. Like, CBC was a different demographic, and it was CBC is a comprehensive school that takes kids from all, academic levels, and Chaminade was like more the top tier, and I noticed that right away, and I just go like, whoa, these kids they're all smart, like at CBC you have more of a mix, and there was tracking. Here it was all like, boom, this is it. I noticed all my colleagues were using college textbooks when we were teaching the seniors, and so it was game on, and they were pretty good students, and you had to be on top of your game because there was a lot of them that were smarter than I were, when I was teaching them, and so you noticed that right away. I would say at CBC there were more fights. There were none here, and it was there was more. They had long hair here, and they didn't have that at CBC, and that was the early days. And then in regards to the Marianist, when I first got here, that was when all the different orders were starting to identify because they knew that their numbers, their religious numbers, would be going down. And so I was here a few years, and they came out with the first version of the CMEs, and I thought it was great. It really gave you an insight on who the brothers were and what it is to be a Marinus. And I remember putting all the CMEs on every quiz at the end to make sure the kids would understand who we are as a Marinus school. And I thought it was great. It was an easy buy-in for me because if you read the CMEs, it covers a lot of ground. And as a history guy, when you can read something, how they taught high school 200 years ago, and see the comparison and contrast of how we're doing it today, a lot of comparisons. A lot of things are different, but there was a lot of sameness. When they say like, "Oh, the kids are different today," well, there's different distractions. So I would say that. But the Marinus piece, I'd say in the mid '90s, it was strong and it was very identifiable.
And approximately how many vowed Marinus brothers, priests were on campus in the mid '90s?
Yeah, when I first got here, they were still living here, and it was kind of cool. They would. We'd have breakfast with them, and sometimes we'd eat lunch with them, and they'd engage, and I liked it. Now, not all, some of them still taught, so I would say there was probably 8 or 9, and then there were some other brothers that were working brothers. They didn't teach; they were just in the community, and so you got to know them. I worked detention a lot with Brother Epi, and I got to know Brother Irv, who did all the facilities, and so there was a lot of. It was a lot of fun getting to know those folks, and they're very insightful. They've been around, and if you ever, anytime you can go to them and ask them, hey, what do you think, So yeah.
Cool. What? Sorry, I went blank for a second. What started your sort of move into administration? Was that a goal of yours all along? Did you get plucked out of the blue in terms of being pulled out of the classroom, and kind of how did that transition work into an assistant principal role first?
Right. Well, it just kind of evolved. I know Mr. Gurker asked me if I was interested in it, and I'd just been in a management position. I just wanted to teach. I wanted to be I was having a lot of fun with that, coaching, and so what happened is, like at all the games, since I was teaching all the seniors, I'd be supervising the kids at the basketball game, and then obviously I was coaching in the football games. But I'd go to all the hockey games. I'd supervise the kids there, and because I had, the relationship you had with the kids, because you're teaching them, it was easier than if you're like a freshman teacher trying to control the seniors.
Sure.
And if you control the seniors, you got the rest, right? And so that kind of happened, and then I don't know. I started taking classes at UMSL. I liked it. It gave me a different perspective. It gave me a perspective on being in management in the construction business. Now I get to see what it's like in the academia. What it's like to be in the education business. And there was a lot of crossovers, a lot of differences. But so that was something that piqued my interest a little bit.
So we'll get into that more in a little bit. I want to touch on Jim Gurker. We've had him on our previous podcast here before. Certainly a legendary name around here. What did you take from him and from his example in sort of those early days of first being your principal, but then ultimately working beside him and alongside him?
Yeah.
What do you learn from him, and what did he bring to the Chaminade community?
Well, Jim, I like Jim. Like when I came in for my interview. So he asked me one question, what do you think about education? And that was the only question. And I talked for a long time, and then this is a Thursday, I'm leaving for Ireland on Saturday, and so I had to call him from Ireland to find out if I got the job, just because, and so I did that, and he says, hey, yeah, because it was 6 o'clock in Ireland, and it was like, I don't know, 12 o'clock noon here, right? Yeah. And so he said, yeah, you got the job. I go, oh, so I guess I'm coming back. He goes, yeah. And so, but when I got here, Jim was, and when I started going to school, and I worked with Jim, and I asked, I'd bounce things off him, because, he was an administrator. And you're writing papers about administration, and I'd pick his brain. What do you think about this? I remember asking him, what do you think is the most important thing about running a school? And he would say innovation. He says, you got to keep moving forward. You got to keep looking at the latest trends. And then he'd ask me, and he goes, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I think having the best faculty. And that came from when I was taking apart a hotel and putting it back together. If I had great people, it was a lot easier. And if you have great teachers, it's going to make your school. Because that's going to make the kids. And so I remember us discussing that at length. And I said, he goes, well, I'm going to hire great ones, and then it's up to them. And I said, well, so we had a different opinion on that. But we'd go back and forth about things and had a lot of good dialogue.
Great. So your first role in the administration was assistant principal for formation or discipline, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Formation.
What is that like, of being the quote unquote disciplinarian or being the formation guy? I'm sure you had some stories, some interesting.
So that was
not that you have to share personal details here, but that seems like a tough job to me, right? Not a job I would sign up for.
Oh, I loved it.
It
was.
What do you love about it?
The kids. Every time you think you've seen something, I've never seen this before. The kids, they're dynamic. They always surprised you. There's a lot of common things. What did you get sit down for? I have no idea. And so I love that one. That happened yesterday. But the kids that's what appealed to me, because they would come down, they'd usually be stressed. And I remember, so you want to create an environment where they feel safe. And I remember I used to have a box of Tootsie Pops. I'd have back here, the big box of them, and they'd be all upset. And I go, would you like one? And then they would say, no, because they'd be mad. And then after the conversation would cruise along, they go, how about those Tootsie Pops? I go, oh yeah, sure, it's still available. But I lots of stories. And it wasn't just discipline. It was just like, I remember one time a kid came down and he goes, well, I swallowed some magnets. I go, what? Magnets. And he says, yeah, they were ball bearing magnets. So I was trying to put a circle around my tongue. Oh. And so I called the nurse at the time, Sue Roach. I go, what do we do? She goes, you got to take him to the hospital. And so we took him to the hospital. I'm just going so I thought I saw everything. But it always happens. Something else new comes about.
Now, I know one thing that I remember you even stressing to me and to the faculty as a whole is that the Marianist idea of sort of, not taking it easy on kids. I'm sure there's a better phrase you have it for it, but giving them a second chance and sort of working to develop. Right, we make mistakes and we want to learn from those mistakes and move forward for it. So, can you speak about sort of discipline in the sense of in that Marianist tradition and how that works?
Yeah, well, I think I got a different perspective when I worked with adults in the economy. The kids have an excuse for being not making good decisions, right? They're half-baked human beings, right? The adults didn't. And so when I was in that business, I was just looking at people going you're an adult, you should be better, right? But the kids, they're like, we're trying to help them. That's what we're trying to do. And so you just got to, sure, it was frustrating. We've seen the same kid every day. But what is your job? Put it in perspective. Your job is to help them be better. And there weren't any really bad kids. There just really weren't. They just needed direction. They needed help. They say, well, they don't have any problems. Everybody has problems. And so I think that was the ability to try to help people. That was important. And when you see them stressing, if there's a way that you could alleviate some of that stress, pain, anxiety, that's helpful. And then it teaches them also to do the same to other people. So, I love that job.
So you mentioned Father Ralph earlier, certainly maybe the most legendary person in the last 50 plus years around Chaminade. As you started to work with him more, now being in the administration, what impact did he have on you personally? Let's just start there, and not the school as a whole. We'll get to that maybe.
Well, so Father Ralph, he taught me a lot he got me in depth of what it is to be a Marianist. Very intelligent human being, Father Ralph, and And so here's this guy. He used to take apart hotels and put them back together. And there was the one-stop shop. The buck stopped here. You're making all the decisions. It's all on you. And so I'm coming in. I'm going to do this, and here's Ralph. Ralph is like laid back, total chill, and he's seen a lot, and he knows the Marinist philosophy of discipleship of equals, and he says, we spread this community, we spread this responsibility. I mean, who are you to think that you're going to make all these decisions? And so it was funny. So Ralph and I worked together for 10 years, and I think I was one of the first class of Mary's lead, and he was my mentor. But he's been my mentor since, and I remember just so many stories. But I talked to him, and I said, in Mary's Lead, which is a program for the Marys to develop administrators in their high schools, okay? And so I said to Ralph, I was supposed to give a report on our mentorship and what we worked out. And so over the time of working with Ralph, Ralph is kind of like, we're all going to make these decisions, and we all have to come to a consensus. And he would make decisions, but he wanted everybody involved. Well, by the time we got done working together, he's making more decisions. I'm becoming more like him, and he's becoming more like me. And so I had to write this report, and I said, hey, Ralph, what if I say this? I go, would you agree with this? He goes, oh, absolutely. So in other words, you always, when you're working with people, you want to get the best out of them. You want to see what they're good at. And you want to learn. I wanted to learn from them. I learn from you. I learn from Scott. I try to get the best and take that. And Ralph's the same way. I've watched him do that. And so when we got to talking, he'd give me books to read and just so I could understand his perspective. And he was also a movie buff, me too. And we'd see movies, talk movies. So Ralph was instrumental in helping me understand the true value of what it is to be a Marinist. And he was just great. And I remember one time we got in an argument about something, and he just turns to me and he goes, is this our first argument? I said, yeah, I guess so. I wasn't in the mood to be trifled with, but he kind of mellowed the situation out. And that was the beauty of Ralph. That was keeping it cool, keeping it calm.
As you said, he was here before you, but you were here for a large part of his tenure, overlapped. To stay on the topic of Father Ralph for a minute, what then impact do you think he had on the school, in our community as a whole? I know it's huge, but what's one maybe thing that stands out? Is there one aspect of the school or that he sort of, you think, transformed the most under his leadership?
Ralph let people be who they are. He brought the best out of them. He didn't. He would let you learn by your mistakes. I thought he would not tell you what to do. He'd ask you questions, and that's one thing I got from him too. Ask questions. Don't tell people what to do. Just ask them. Well, if you do this, what's going to happen? And I think the biggest impact he had is allowing people to be who they are, to bring the best out in them, so they could provide for the community. And I think he did that in a way where you didn't even know it. And he always made it, well, a lot of times it was other people's ideas. And he didn't have a big ego. It seemed like to me. But, and he could always talk to him. And I think that was the beauty of Ralph. I think it was really him being a Marinist was great. And his intelligence, those are all great aspects that I thought he brought to the table that moved the school along.
Right.
So
how long were you in the formation role, and then talk to us about the circumstances of you moving into the principal role and into the big chair?
Yeah, so I was in formation, I think, 2007 to, 2011. And then one day I was, getting ready for the next year. It was in June, and Ralph walked in and he said, hey, do you want to be the next principal? And I was like, oh, I was just loving my job, just getting it squared away, just getting in a groove. I'm going like, oh man, I don't know. And I go, well, can I think about it? I go, sure. And I feel bad because he's so smart. I waited for a month, and it's getting second week of July, and you would figure he'd come in and say, "Hey, man, what's the deal?" He didn't say anything, and I finally go, "Yeah, I'll take the job." He goes, "About time." I was getting nervous, but I knew you'd take the job. So that was the beauty of Ralph. You know, he didn't pressure you. And it was a big change, you know, because you're moving in a different mode.
Yeah, what are some of the uncertainties that you had, or not that you didn't want to do it, but like what made you
Right.
contemplate for a month?
Well, first of all, I loved doing discipline and formation with the kids. And now you're taking on all of the faculty. You're taking on your spiritual leader of the school. You're also taking on how you're going to move the school forward. What initiatives are you going to get? You're going to hire all the faculty or start, you know, lead that truck. It's a lot. And then you're also overseeing the athletic director, the resident program. And so there's a lot more. And so I was, you know, I'm still in the mode like coming like gonna run a hotel job where I'm trying to control everything. And I remember having discussions with Ralph about that. And he goes, well, no, if you do that, you're going to burn. And well, I tried it anyway, and he was just cool as a cucumber. He let me crash a few times, and he didn't have that look like I told you, but so you just learn. So that was the biggest interpretation. I didn't, you know, it was the unknowns. And then if the faculty, you know, I've been there for 15 years, or you know, or a lot of them are my friends. Now I'm going to be their boss, and so that was another dicey thing, but. You know, it worked out, I hope. I think so.
What's now, how many years into it? I'm not good at my math. 13 into your principalship?
Yeah.
What's looking back something, one or two things that you're sort of most proud of, or that you, whether it's a new initiative, whether it's something you did or we did collaboratively?
Well, I'm proud of the faculty that I hired. I always try to hire people smarter than me, and so there's a lot of smart people around here, and the bar's low for me. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of all the faculty that we all hired here at Chaminade under my leadership, and I'm proud of the fact that I was able to evolve into what Ralph was asking me to do, to let people be who they are and get the best out of them, and I see that all the time. Especially now, we have a new administration. I'm proud of hiring, you know, Dr. Guidry and Pete as when I first became an administrator. We've learned from each other. We've grown from each other, and the transition of Todd becoming my boss has been a pleasure. I try to be a good boss to him. I think he's a wonderful boss to me, and I think the proudest thing, you know. It's hard to say because it's such a collaborative place. Like the house system, I wouldn't say, oh, I did the house system. I was part of that. But being part of all these initiatives, being part of the laptop, getting excited about things, getting excited about professional development. I mean, those working with people to get that done and collaborating, being a discipleship of equals with the people, the other lay Mary's teachers working here, I think that's the most exciting thing.
Great. You brought up there the house system. That I wanted to sort of take a step back in time, and you were very instrumental in the beginning of that. Certainly, you were still in the classroom then, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you were still in the classroom. So what was it like early in the house system? Why did you buy in early as one of the first deans? What was exciting to you as a teacher about this new thing that might be happening?
Well, so I was still teaching. I was going to grad school. And Mr. Gurker asked me and a whole bunch of teachers to look into this. We spent 2 years just, you know, looking into it. He had went to Australia, and he had saw the house system. He wanted to bring it back here. So he asked a group of us to look into it and see if we wanted to do it. And we all agreed, and we wanted to do it, and it was exciting. And I remember there were so many memories from that first time when we did it. And then we went to launch it. Once again, I was trying to make everything perfect and control everything and make all the list of what everybody's supposed to do. And Mr. Gurker said, no, they'll figure it out as they go. And I'm going to go, you know, it's different for seniors. And so in the beginning, early days, you know, the seniors were making all the decisions. I mean, to a certain extent. I remember making the Meyer House video. One of the students, I go, all right, let me look at your video. They didn't tell me what they're going to do, but he climbed the front of the school building, Chaminade Hall, and it's in the video. And I was like going, what? He did that, no ropes, nothing. And I'm just looking at this video, and I knew that he was still alive, and sitting right there. Like, don't do that anymore. So I knew that, they were making some adult-minded decisions on, what to do, what kind of fun to have.
The Wild Wild West early in the days.
Yeah.
You were mentioning before we started filming too, hitting flaming golf balls off of Frishy Hall or something.
Off the roof.
What is that story, or what's
the part of Frishy where there's the awning that goes from Frishy to Canning. Yeah, so they were lighting golf balls and teeing them off and hitting them onto the baseball field. That's not a good thing, because some safety concerns. So yeah, there was a lot of dark alleys we went down with the kids in the beginning, but then we quickly realized we need to give them more structure. But we still need to let them make decisions, but we just need the guiding hand, so to speak.
Sure.
And so I think that was beneficial.
So now, many years into the house system, what do you think that has added to our community and to the school as a whole?
Oh, I think it has added a great deal to our community. I think it provides leadership opportunities for our students, and it builds camaraderie. It's a glue, I was talking to a dad at the football game the other day. He has his son's in the middle school, and he's talking to one of the football players, and he says, he comes home and says, he's going D1, Dad. So I could hear the senior talking through. The kid is just so impressed. I think that has always been one of the biggest assets that has come out of the house system. We noticed that one right away. I mean, you'd see upperclassmen taking middle school kids to games and stuff, and we learned that we had to pick the right guys to go down in the middle school. That was important too. So the leadership of all of the kids, and then the camaraderie between the different divisions. It's not as challenging as it was before, and I think it has created more of a school community, like we're all together. And friendly competition. They all want to win the house coat, but no one's dying for it, But I think it's more fun. Mm-hmm. And so I think that creates a culture that is helpful to the education process, gotcha. For sure.
So what are some initiatives, whether either specific or a little more general, that you want to see Chaminade move to, or that are priorities for you right now and the administration as a whole, that looking 5 years, 10 years, the good old question of 5 or 10 years down the road, what's the focus for Chaminade?
Well, the world's changing, but students are the same, but we need to get them ready for a changing world. And I think our idea of modern learning, how to navigate the world, is probably one of our priorities for our students. We need to prepare them for jobs that don't even exist now. We need to make them, we always have made them lifelong learners, but I think the way we go, we have to be more intentional about it. We have to be across the board. It can't be, there's a lot of autonomy. When I first got here, it was like, shut the door, go into class, do your thing, and there wasn't a lot of communication between the different teachers. Now that has changed. Everything used to be content driven back then. Now it's more process driven, and I think that's very important. I think the culture and our Marinus heritage always have to look at that, because all the kids and adults are, changing. There's transition. Kids move out of the school, and you have to keep that flame, the Marinus flame, going. And that is, I would say that's paramount, because that's the foundation, that's the glue that holds everything else. That's the glue that helps you do modern learning. That's the glue that helps you do any professional development, anything at the school. That has to be the priority.
All right, so we talked a little bit about your personal life kind of before getting into education, but I wanted to double back to that. You had some sons that went through here at Chaminade with you.
Yes.
What was that like? Was there any challenges with that? Fun? Did you enjoy that? Talk us through that. I had the benefit of experiencing that with my son here. It was a great experience. What was your experience on that?
I thought it was great. It might have been harder on them than me, but when your kids go here, you can have your worst day. If you see one of your kids, it makes a difference. And then you get to see another side. right? The side that you can't talk about to the other teachers, you just got to keep. And the same for them. They would see a side that they couldn't share. And so you kind of had this, relationship where, all right, mum's the word, what we talk about at home. And it's really interesting. They're older now, right? So when they come home from Christmas, what do you think they all talk about? They talk about those times when we were at Chaminade. They talk about the people. They talk about all the teachers. That's the most important thing. And I think that's what Chaminade is. They don't talk about algebra and they don't talk about history. They talk about the peeps. And I think that really, that's a big statement for who we are as a school.
Cool. So sort of taking on that little bit of the personal side, what does Phil Rone like to do outside? I know you're a big cyclist. What are some of your interests outside of Chaminade, outside of work?
Well, like you said, I early on when I first got here, I was a runner, and then I got older, got plantar fasciitis, so then I started riding a bike. So I'm an avid bike rider. That's a lot of fun. Me and Julie, my wife, we like to go to the movies. We're big movie buffs. We like to go and listen to jazz. And then I have a big family, like I mentioned before, and so that's a big part of our life. And doing all family stuff and those kind of things is always a lot of fun. I've been in St. Louis my whole life. A lot of connections. It's hard to go anywhere without running into peeps that especially people from Chaminade. And then generational friends that my parents were friends with. That like our families knew each other before we did.
Right.
So I think that's one of the cool things of St. Louis. And so yeah, those are the things that I do outside of here.
Very good. You mentioned Ireland earlier. What's your favorite place in the world you've ever visited? Just a little random question.
That's not easy.
Put you on the spot.
Okay. Well, I went to Germany this year with the kids. That was a pretty nice place. I would say, I don't know. France has got great food. Ireland's got great crack is what they call. It's not the crack you're thinking of, but it's their term for fun.
Right.
They're very hospitable people. They're very gracious. They're very sarcastic, and it's usually I go there in the summer, so it's nice and cool, right? And so as opposed to the heat here, I'd probably say Ireland.
Very cool. That would be my place as well too. So great minds think alike in that regard. Last two questions for you. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, so maybe a little bit of a repeat. But who are some of the Chaminade characters, the Chaminade legends? You've mentioned a few already. We've talked about some that maybe we haven't talked about that really sort of stood out to you over your time here, maybe your early time that you learned from, or that you see working now, that really have made an impact on our community in the last 30 plus years.
Yeah. So my contemporaries, Mr. Massa, Mr. Fernandez, Dr. Karcher. So that's a group that I came in with, and we're still here. Mr. Murphy, Mr. Bob Murphy. It's fun to see them. We're all still here. And Mr. Charisma, all the things that we've seen transpire. Another important thing has had an influence on me is the people that I taught here that are now working here. That's always fun too. I would say, and then when I was here in the beginning, the teachers, the Mr. Frains, Mr. McKim, all of them guys, giving you wise advice on how to teach, how to, be at Chaminade and the importance of it. Brother Tim, those folks had a big impact early on, and then you kind of felt like you had to carry on that torch. Mr. Gerker, Brother Villa, and then Father Oscar, and then Father Ralph. I mean, Father Ralph's been here the whole time, but I would say, as I went into administration, had a bigger impact. So yeah, those are the legends.
Awesome. Good. So we always wrap up our podcast by asking our guest one final question that's the same is Estovir, our school motto. What does that mean to you specifically, to Phil Rone? What is your take on that? Be a man obviously can mean many things to many people. What is your take after many years here in Marianist education? What does Estovir mean to Phil Rone?
Estovir to me is lifelong learner, always discovering new things about yourself, trying on new things. I think that's one of the things we do well here. We have a curriculum based on 2,500 kids, and we only have 800 kids here. And so we got a lot of slots to fill, and so kids can move around. Like when I was at CBC, you played football the whole 4 years, and that was it. Yeah, or you were into play. And because there's, but when I came here, I saw kids would, 1 year they'd play football, 1 year they'd be in the play, and so they do a lot of different things. And I think that's important. I think it's important when they try on a lot of different extracurriculars or clubs and things like that, because they can find out who they are. That's the important thing. Find out who you are. And then once you learn that, you know that that's going to be always evolving and always changing. And so I think that's the key. That's what SWR is all about. Lifelong learner. Be the best person, not to steal from the Army, they could possibly be.
Very good. Well, thank you, Phil, for all you do for our campus and have done over the many years that you've been here, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you also out there in the audience for joining us on our latest episode of The Hilltop.